Welcome to the first Horizon Europe cluster-focused webinar organized by the delegation of the European Union to Canada. My name is Agnieszka Wejnar, and I'm a team leader of the EU-Canada Policy Dialogue Support Facility, the project that supports this event. I will be your moderator today, and first, I would like to invite Madame Carole Moncel-Blanchard to give her welcoming remarks. She's the head of Unit for International Cooperation for Europe and Americas at the Directorate General for Research and Innovation at the European Commission. Carole, please.
Thank you, Agnieszka. Good morning to all in Canada and good afternoon to the participants in Europe. As most of you certainly know, the European research program called Horizon Europe, to which Canada is associated since the 1st of January 2024, is built on three main pillars. And the second pillar of the program is about the funding of projects tackling global challenges and boosting competitiveness. Under this pillar, research is promoted on 6 different themes, which we call clusters. And I would like to welcome you today to the first Horizon Europe information session dedicated to a specific cluster. Cluster 2, which is about culture, creativity, and inclusive society. Allow me first and foremost to thank warmly all the speakers who have accepted to share their expertise with us today. We are looking forward to hearing from them. And let me also share with you my pleasure to hear that more than 422 participants have registered to this webinar on Cluster 2. There are a great number of researchers and professors from various universities and research centers across Canada, as well as government stakeholders, EU member states, and I think also from associated countries to Horizon Europe. So welcome to all again. The high number of participation shows a lot of things. First of all, that there's a great interest in Horizon Europe. Second, that there's a need to give more information about the program, and that EU and Canadian stakeholders share the commitment to turn Canada's association into a great success. So for all these reasons, the Directorate General in charge of research and innovation in the European Commission, together with the delegation of the European Union to Canada, have developed a full action plan on Horizon Europe. So it will include actions throughout 2025 to promote Canadian stakeholders' understanding of Horizon Europe, to help them understand better how to participate in the calls. And this is very relevant since the program, the framework program, is functioning on the basis of annual or biannual working plan. And we will have the 2025 working plan approved in April. And by the end of the year, the working plan for 2026 and 2027. And these working plans are setting the ground for a whole series of calls to which Canadian and research entities will be able to apply. Already since July, we advertise the opportunities of the program, the specificities of the program, the requirements which apply. And to achieve this objective, we have worked together with ISET, the Innovation, Science and Economic Development Department of Canada. We have also mobilized the network of our member states, and we have leveraged the EU-Canada Policy Dialogue Support Facility, which is a dedicated instrument which has the EU delegation in Canada to support cooperation and outreach activities on the ground. And these actions, like the webinar of today, would not be possible without it. Cluster 2, which is about culture, creativity, and inclusive society, aims to safeguard cultural heritage in a way that it contributes to inclusion and growth. So both very important objectives for the EU, but also everywhere else in the world. So throughout the session, we will learn several things. First, how to navigate in the Horizon Europe program. Then tips for good proposal writing, which is very important for applicants to maximize their chances to be selected. Specific information about the evaluation process of application under Horizon Europe program. And we will also hear testimonials with best practices following a project journey that will be inspiring for your forthcoming applications. At the end of the presentation, it will be your turn to ask questions to the speakers. And I want to say that this first webinar, thematic webinar, is only the beginning. So the next cluster-specific webinar will take place on the 20th of February. It will focus on Cluster 6, Food, Bioeconomy, Natural Resources, Agriculture and Environment. And we will share with you the agenda on the following webinars covering all the clusters in the following months. In addition, we are planning a roadshow in early March 2025. The roadshow consists in a list of, in a series of events that will take place in Western Canada. And our team, together with ICED, will be in Vancouver on the 10th of March, in Edmonton on the 12th of March, and in Saskatoon on the 14th of March. And after that, a second roadshow will be organized by ICED in Eastern Canada with the participation of the EU delegation in Ottawa. And it will take place, this roadshow in Eastern Canada, in Montreal, Halifax, and St. John's during the week of the 24th of March. So more information will follow soon. And later on in the year, there will be some info days on Horizon Europe program and the Research and Innovation Days as well. It will be online events, so you will have also the opportunity to participate in such events. Before giving the floor to Mikołaj Piczak, the national contact point from Poland, Agnieszka, back to you for some housekeeping remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Carole. So yes, I wanted to, before we start with our panelists, I want to give some housekeeping remarks, which is basically the fact that you are, of course, welcome to put your questions into the Q&A chat that we have open. The idea will be that we do have the open mic session at the end. However, you are welcome to ask clarifying questions as we go, and we will be trying to answer them as we go. So please do this. Also, the webinar is recorded and it will be available later on the YouTube channel of the delegation of the European Union to Canada. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Mikołaj Piczak, who is joining us from Poland. He's the national contact point for Cluster 2 at the Polish Framework Program, and he comes to us with 20 years of experience in various roles and within the framework programs, also in Europe. And this is a very valuable expertise, and Mikołaj will tell us everything that we need to know about the work program in Cluster 2. Thank you, Mikołaj.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for this kind introduction and for inviting me for today's webinar. So without further ado, please allow me to share the slides for my presentation. So what I want to speak to you about today would be the basic information, the basic info package about Cluster 2 that will shed some light on what kind of research, what kind of activities can be performed under this particular area of Horizon Europe. So as Karol was kind enough to start with introduction about the Horizon Europe, you already know that Cluster 2 is part of the second pillar of this framework program. There are 6 clusters dedicated to various areas of technological and economical and different types of research and innovation. And Cluster 2 revolves around the culture, creativity, and inclusive societies. But what I already want to let you know about is that social sciences and humanities, which are the core of Cluster 2 activities, they are not only focused around the second cluster. Obviously, social sciences and humanities, which are the expertise that you and your organizations, your institutions, universities and institutes that you represent, you can also use your competences and experiences in other areas of Horizon Europe, in other clusters. And I really believe that this could be further on taken as another event to provide you with some more information about the integration of your expertise in other areas of Horizon Europe. But focusing on Cluster 2, it has 3 main goals. It has 3 main pillars, foundations, as the European Commission also calls them. So first of all, Cluster 2 aims to meet the goals and priorities of the European Union. There are 3 goals that have been identified, which are the enhancement of democratic governance and participation of citizens in research and innovation activities. The second one is to safeguard and promote the cultural heritage of Europe. And the third one is to provide new solutions, to provide new responses to different social, economic, technological, cultural transformations. Those 3 goals, those 3 areas have been called destinations, and around those 3 pillars, the work programs, which have already been brought by Karol, the work programs are being built, and topics and thematics of the calls are being identified by the European Commission. Nevertheless, as I said at the beginning on the previous slide, also it has been identified that social sciences and humanities provide a very wide array of expertise that can be used to provide with societal, economical, political, and cultural support towards implementation of goals that have been set up for Cluster 2. Also, the final foundation of Cluster 2 is to provide evidence-based policies that can further on boost the European green and digital transition and recovery processes. And those 3 foundations are the pillars of on which the whole Cluster 2 have been built, and around those pillars, those key areas, the work programs and calls are also being prepared by the European Commission. So nevertheless, Cluster 2 doesn't only close itself for the calls that are being launched, but also provides some hints on where to look for synergies, because there are many different other programs launched by the European Commission for where the social sciences and humanities, and their expertise can be further also applied. So we have the Creative Europe, we have the Digital Europe program. There are many different programs for where your expertise could also be used, and you can even go further from what you will be doing in future in cluster to calls, and then bring this experience, those new results that you can that you will be developing in the proposals, and then you can bring them in synergy with other programs and apply to other programs as well. So there are many different excuse me, there are many different programs. All of them are very well listed and further on explained in the work programs, which I will be referring to very shortly in my presentation. So, because this word work program has already been mentioned quite many times today, the work programs are documents prepared jointly by the European Commission and member states of the European Union. And basically, they are the documents that provide potential future proposals, the consortia that apply for the calls. They provide with information about the topics, about the areas, about what kind of research and innovation is being sought for by the European Commission. And those work programs are being developed taking into consideration different European Union's strategies and policies, also inputs from different expert groups that the European Commission is working and consulting together. And of course, given that the work programs are mostly biannual, so we are already after implementation of 2 biannual work programs. So there are projects already running, some experiences drawn from them. Some topics have been fulfilled with projects, some not. So also the European Commission is looking back at what has been funded, looking for any gray spots to be filled, and this is how, in general, the work programs are being prepared. This process takes more or less at least 6 months. There are several different versions of this document being prepared, and afterwards, once everything is finalized, the calls are being published. And for Cluster 2, it is expected that the 2025 calls should be publicly launched by the European Commission in the course of May this year. So not that much time until the call publication. So I think today's webinar is organized in a very good period so that you can have enough time to prepare yourselves to identify later on potential areas that might be common with the strategies and interests of your organizations. So where to look for all the information that concerns calls for proposals of Horizon Europe? So there is this one big joint funding and EU funding and tenders portal, where all the programs, not only Horizon Europe, but all the programs financed by the European Commission and European Union are being channeled into. There is this section that provides you with guidance documents, and within it there are reference documents where you will be able to find later on the work program for 2025. I'm saying later on because they haven't been still published. So until they are, you will have to wait for the official publication, which should happen in May, and then you will be able to get yourselves acquainted with what will be planned for the calls that will be closed sometime in the 3rd or 4th quarter of this year. So just to give you an example of how the work programs look like, what will you be able to find there? Obviously, as I said, there are 3 areas. So for each of the areas, for democracy, the cultural heritage, and for the transformations, there is also always a number of topics which have been identified by the European Commission, and they reflect all those strategies and working group inputs that I have already told you about. So there will be for every work program there will be a list of the topics, which usually is a good starting point. Just reading the headlines, the titles of the topics can already give you a first idea of what potentially you might be interested in, and then further read on the topic descriptions, because as you can clearly see at the bottom of this slide, those documents are quite often very big in volume, so it might not be a good idea to start reading everything all together, all the 200 pages. Firstly, you can take a look at the titles and then see which topics are potentially of most interest for you, your team, your organization. Once this is done, you can start reading the topic descriptions itself. They usually follow the same scheme. You have specific conditions that are applied to this particular topic. Those conditions provide you usually with information of how much budget has been put to finance the projects, how much budget has been secured for each of the projects. So, for example, we have a total budget for this particular topic of 9 million, but you can see that the expected EU contribution per project is 2 or 3 million, which tells us that for this particular core topic, there will be at least 2 or even 3 projects funded. And this allows the European Commission to receive different topics, different proposals, and to fund at least 3 projects which provide with some variety of research and innovation outcomes and results tackling the issues that have been brought for this topic that we see here. Also, what is worth and should be read when you get yourselves acquainted with the topics are the expected outcomes, because this is basically what you have to address when preparing your proposal application. You have to read the outcomes, and if said otherwise, if written otherwise, you have to answer with your proposal to all expected outcomes. In many cases, there is also a notion, a sentence put in the expected outcome section that says that the consortium should, for example, answer to at least 2 or at least 3 out of the whole list of the outcomes. But this is not the case for this particular topic, because for this one, the consortium should be able to address all the outcomes that have been brought in the description. Also, another part of this topic description is the scope, which provides you with background and which provides you with further explanation of what has to be included in your project, in your proposal application. So further information, once you read the projects, you can the topics, further information about them can also be found on the EU Funding and Tenders portal. What is also worth mentioning is that when you go there and when you read the description of the topic, there are also at the bottom of this page, once the calls, of course, are open, there is also a possibility to see if there is already any interest in this particular topic, because the Funding and Tenders portal provides its users with an opportunity and option to send their collaboration offers, which are identified and put into particular topics that organizations consider most interesting for them. So just to give you some more introductory information about Cluster 2 itself, I already told you that there are 3 main destinations for it, which is the democracy and governance, the European cultural heritage and creative cultural and creative industries, and of course the social and economic transformations. The whole Cluster 2 budget for the duration of Horizon Europe is 2.3 billion euros. Some parts of it have already been spent, as you can see, throughout the first 4 years, and we are now awaiting for a publication of the calls for this year, for 2025. So for the destination of democracy and governance, it has 3 impacts that have been identified for the whole duration of the program, which is to reinvigorate democratic governance and, of course, to improve and further on reinforce the trust of public, of people into democratic institutions, to safeguard the fundamental rights of citizens, and of course to further on expand the political participation, the social dialogue with society, inclusion and civic engagement, and of course gender equality. There are 4, let's call them main core areas around which the topics are being built. So it's protecting and nurturing democracies, reshaping the democracy, standing up, defending, further on strengthening the democracy, and of course also a bit of looking past at the past, how the democracies have been developed, looking at the best practices and drawing conclusions from them. For the European cultural heritage, those 3 expected impacts are that the cultural heritage of Europe, the arts sector, the cultural and creative sectors are drivers of sustainable innovation. And this is one of the remarks that I want to pass to you, that out of all those 3 destinations, destination 2 is more oriented towards higher so-called technological readiness levels, meaning that, of course, there is room for research, and it is very much supported in the calls, but the innovation part is very much brought further on than in destinations revolving around democracy or the transformations. So there's also, of course, engagement with society, citizens, and economic sectors, because one of the key activities of this destination is to further allow the citizens and the society to be able to draw from the richness of the cultural heritage, and of course more protection, better restoration and promotion of the heritage of Europe. So one of the new activities within this destination 2 is the collaborative cloud for digitization of the cultural heritage, and I will speak about it shortly in my presentation as well. So for the destination 3, there are 2 overarching impacts on social and economic resilience and sustainability, and strengthening them through better understanding of different social, ethical, political, and economic drivers, impacts of drivers of change, and also how they interconnect together with looking at the social resilience. And there are 2 main areas about the inclusiveness in changing environments of Europe and beyond, and the other area is focusing on sustainability of the future of Europe. So I said at the beginning of my presentation that Cluster 2 is focusing on the experiences and the background of social sciences and humanities, but there is also this exercise, these activities done throughout the whole Horizon Europe, which provide with opportunities for social sciences and humanities organizations to be also active in other clusters. So I believe it would be really worth having another meeting about it to speak about synergies of Cluster 2 and SSH with other clusters, because in health, in transport, in the environment, in food, and also in digital sector, there are many activities, many areas which of course, could use experience and capacities of social sciences and humanities for more impactful research and to deliver more impactful solutions for the society of Europe. So I already brought this information to you about the European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage. This is a new undertaking from the European Commission, and it already focuses on providing new solutions for digitalization of the European cultural heritage solutions, and also will provide new developments and new products helping to preserve, to conserve, restore, and enhance the cultural heritage of Europe. Also, there are two new undertakings going further from the actual calls for proposals of Cluster 2. They are called the partnerships. So they are supporting further on the development and implementation of Horizon Europe, and they are supposed to be, and they will be more open and transparent in terms of participants' activities and results, and they will be focusing on two areas, on the resilient cultural heritage and on social transformations and resilience. The first partnership on the resilient cultural heritage should launch this year, and the social transformations and resilience will be scheduled to launch, I think, by the either end of 2026 or beginning of 2027. They will be also having their own calls for proposals, which will be in line with what Cluster 2 is announcing in its own calls. So they will be complementing and further bringing research and innovation of cultural heritage and social transformations to another level. So because we already said that the calls for this year are planned to be launched sometime in May, but nevertheless, you can already start looking at potential opportunities. The network of national contact points for Cluster 2 has its own partnering, brokering platform, an online platform that provides you with an opportunity to meet for now online, but we will be also organizing on-site events. But for now, we have this big platform with almost 3,000 participants in it, with close to 80 countries right now. And there you can register yourself, register your organization, you can browse the participants, you can use different filters. If, for example, you are interested in democracy research, you can filter out organizations with the same interest. You can already meet with them because the platform provides you with an opportunity and tools to host online meetings, and you can already start identifying if there are any organizations that you might potentially join forces for future this year's and next year's calls for Cluster 2. So you have this link to the community platform of Cluster 2 at the bottom right of my slide. I suppose that all the slides will be also sent to you, so you can use those links later on as well. And also, if you want to have a bigger picture about other cluster NCP network activities, if you are more interested in providing for example, your social science and humanities expertise, let's say to the security research or maybe to food or bioeconomy, there is this one Horizon Europe NCP portal that provides you with links to other networks, and then you can see how the brokering, the collaboration opportunities, what kind of them are being provided by those NCP networks. So with that, I will conclude my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them in chat or later on in the Q&A session. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mikołaj. It was a very rich presentation, and you are on time, so this is really good, very appreciated. I already saw that there have been some questions that you might want to look at later on and answer in our Q&As. And now I will move to Maria Pawłowska, our next expert, who comes to us with a lot of long years of expertise in various European and Canadian research frameworks. She's an expert in research management, including application design and management. And her role is a little bit tricky today. We asked Maria to give us the nitty-gritty details of getting a proposal together. And this means that hopefully she will also share with us some do's and don'ts. And Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'll begin by sharing my presentation, maybe. Hopefully you can all see it now. So I'm very grateful to Mikołaj for his presentation. It's a really great introduction to the topic. I'm also a little daunted because he had a huge topic to talk about and he came in under time, and I have a huge topic to talk about, and I don't know, hopefully I'll come in time. It's pretty daunting because I have to tell you about how to prepare a proposal for Horizon Europe. And I'm sure if any of you had a quick look at it, you'll see that it's huge, and there is honestly no way I can give you all the details you need to know and all the information in 30 minutes, but I'll do my best to introduce the topic and maybe make it just a little easier to get into it on your own. So just following up on what Mikołaj has said about how social sciences and humanities experts are needed beyond Cluster 2. And I just wanted to, he mentioned a few areas. I just wanted to show you a concrete example of that. This is the European Partnership on Transforming Health and Care Systems, but there is specifically health economics, health psychology, and business and organizational management. So here we have absolutely SSH experts who are required in other clusters and other funding opportunities. So just like Mikołaj has said, I encourage you to think beyond Cluster 2 because there are so many options. I think there is sometimes this thought, and I've spoken to people around Canada who are worried that since they don't work on technology and Horizon Europe is very much an R&D program, is there a role for them? Absolutely there is. There's a whole cluster, but also please go beyond the cluster. Okay, as Agnieszka has said, we promised you some do's and don'ts, so I will lead with those and then get into more details. So for starters, align your research to the topic. The Commission knows very well what they're asking for. As Mikołaj has highlighted, they're showing you exactly what they want out of the money they are giving you effectively. So it's absolutely not a good idea to try and convince them that you know better and you have a better idea. So basically, don't square a round peg. Very much make sure your peg is round when you're trying to fit it into a round hole. It's not going to work if you're going to try and convince them otherwise. The success rates for Horizon Europe are still pretty low, depending on who you talk to and what clusters or what years you look at. It goes from anywhere between 5 to 16%. So you really do want to do exactly what they're asking for, because otherwise they're absolutely not going to get funded. The next thing is give yourself plenty of time. I can't tell you how many institutions in Canada I've spoken to over the past year where people have submitted their applications last minute, and surprise, surprise, none of them got funded. These things take time. They're big. They require a lot of partners. Usually the minimum is 3 different countries. But usually it's anything from 6 to 15, honestly. And just getting organized in a group like that takes time. And that's even without thinking of the merits of the application you want to write, just making sure everybody's connected and everybody's thinking about the same things. So we tend to say it's a minimum of 6 months to really prepare an application that might be successful. That's also why the work programs come out earlier, to give you time to look at this and to assemble a consortium, or to make sure you're part of a consortium, but I'll get to that. That's the last point. Understand the EU evaluation criteria. Fortunately, you're very lucky. You will get to hear a presentation about exactly that right after this one, so I won't go into too much detail about that. But what I will tell you is, please don't assume you're writing for the tri-councils. Again, this is a very, very different beast, and you don't want to, anything you've done for the tri-councils or the way you've done things for the tri-councils, probably not a lot of that is going to be transferable. Very different funding organizations looking for different things on literally different continents. So don't take your lessons learned from your tri-council applications and try to apply them here. And choose the right consortium. We're assuming that a lot of you are probably going to be joining existing consortiums and not necessarily assembling them yourself. I think that there are 2 lines of thought here. Some people say work with people you already know. Some people say don't work with people you already know. We will have panelists later telling you about how they came into projects. So again, I won't focus too much on that. But as Mikołaj has said, and as you will hear later, there are options to make new partnerships and build up on existing relationships in the European Partnership Framework. Okay, so this is a bit of a workflow, really, and things you need to think about when you're going about your application. So to begin with, you want to go on the Funding and Tenders portal. Mikołaj has shown you, where you want to go, what you want to look at. The work program, choosing a call and a topic, and then building a consortium, or again, joining an existing consortium. There are networking events and matchmaking services that make that possible, either online or in person. And then you want to assign roles in a project. This is a big one. There will be, the way Horizon Europe proposals are structured is around work packages. And you can't necessarily assume that a single partner will get a full work package. That work packages are often divided between partners. And what's really important is that there's a very good reason for all the people who are on the particular proposal and for what they are doing. I know this person, or I've worked with them 10 years, is usually not, well, always, honestly, not a good enough excuse to have them on the project. You need to convince the Commission and its experts and evaluators why these are the absolutely best people to do what you've been asked to do. And as Mikołaj has mentioned, the amount of money for each topic is right there in the call. That's very transparent. On average, European grants are around, and this is, again, an average, so we all know the problems with averages, but it's around 4 million euro, which at the moment is just over 6 million Canadian dollars. So again, it's quite a lot of money that you are being given, but it comes with responsibility, and it comes with making sure that the roles are clearly assigned and it's clear why this role has been assigned. Now, it's not a secret that there's a lot of bureaucracy that happens around an application, and the Commission is working on that. There have been press statements made about that. But at the moment, we are dealing with quite a big application. I'll get to that in a second. But I think, again, it's important to keep in mind the amount of money that is there at the end of the day. And it's years worth of research and R&D activity and work that you get funded. That is one of the reasons, you're asked to put in the work beforehand. You really want to include your research services. I can't stress this enough. I assume some of you on this call are representatives of administration. But for those of you who are researchers, again, please don't assume you can do this alone. honestly, you can't. I've never, in over 10 years of working on EU project, I haven't seen a single successful application put in without a lot of support from research services. Now, what's important is that in Pillar 2, which we're talking about today, Cluster 2 is part of Pillar 2, the grants you are given to your institution, not you personally. That's a bit different in some of the other pillars, but here you need to, the institution takes responsibility for your grant. And they need to be able to participate, and you want them to participate in the writing and the preparation of the grant. I have participated in the preparation of multiple European grants, and most, if not, well, definitely a lot, and often most of the work is done by research administration because of the huge role that is taken on by the institution itself. And as we walk through the proposal, you'll see where it is that the researchers take the lead and where is it that the institution itself takes the lead. Now, the two things I wanted to point out at this time are gender and open science. I wanted to highlight these because there's a big difference in how Canadian institutions and funding organizations look at diversity and inclusion and how the European Commission does. Now, I've been asked more times than I can tell you about an Indigenous stream in European funding. It does not exist. That doesn't mean your experience with Indigenous communities is irrelevant, but there's never going to be funding specifically for Indigenous population related research, also just because of the history and demographics of Europe. And the only aspect of diversity and inclusion that is considered in the application is gender. Importantly, it's part of the excellence criterion. So the way the gender aspect has to be worked into the way you do your research on multiple levels. It's not just a thing you do later on, or you make sure you consider it, once everything is said and done. You have to show how your research is actually actively including the gender perspective, whether it's, in the population you study, the researchers who do the actual research, you do get extra points. You go higher up in the final rankings if you have more female researchers on your team. And it's not just a diversity and inclusion criterion, it's specifically an excellence criterion, and it's just gender. And the other thing is open science. Now, open science is not necessarily something that's gotten a lot of space in conversations around science communication or transfer of knowledge in Canada. We are very much focused recently on science security, it's very important to say that science security and open science are not mutually exclusive in any way. But the conversation in Europe has very much been on the opening up of research results. And it's coming from an interesting perspective because it's a fiscal responsibility perspective in Europe, where this is, tax-funded research that should be available to all. And again, the open science aspect has to be worked into your application in a way that is incomparable to anything that current Canadian funders require of you. However, importantly, that the fact that the Tri-Council's introduced an RDM, research data management requirement, will help you a lot in building this part of your application. And I can almost guarantee you have someone at your institution, whether at the library or at information services, who can help you with that. And please do reach out to them because, again, open science is a very important part of these applications. Okay, let's get to the proposal itself. There's the part A. This is sort of the let's call it the easy part, because this is the one where you fill in the information online about, the general information about the application, participants, budget, ethics and security, which is, some of it is literally a checkbox you have to tick or don't tick. And that you do online, and it gets uploaded automatically into the application. Now, the budget, you have millions of euros, but it's a single page that you fill in. And you provide way less detail than you probably think you should be asked for. The detail is really, it's broad categories. But what's important here is that once it's in the application, I mean, you can move things around later on, but it's really, really important that you sit down with your consortium members, other consortium members, and discuss this. Now, the applications I've worked on, the budget is where, there are conversations that are somewhat less friendly than you would have wanted. And these conversations, really important, are not had by the researchers. Researchers are removed from a lot of these discussions because they state their needs. They say how many people they need to hire. They talk about the equipment, but then the rest of it is taken over by administration, and it's administration and the different institutions and the administration, the different institutions that have these, more or less pleasant conversations about how the budget will be divided. And these can take months, depending on the size of the project. The bigger the project, the longer the conversations usually last. But again, please don't assume that this is something you can do in a week. And again, to any researchers on this call, please make sure you run this by your research services, because there may be particular requirements specific to either your institution or to European funding that will make it difficult to work with what you have suggested once the project is funded. Okay, now let's get to sort of the nitty-gritty of the actual stuff that needs to be written. So the first criterion is excellence, and we like to talk about that as the what of the application. What is it that you want to do? Now, important note, and this is copied and pasted from the application, from the standard application that you can find online. The Commission tells you that, for example, 4 pages. That's honestly more or less what they want. It's an example, because maybe you have really, really good reasons to go over those 4 pages, but generally you don't. And again, my experience has been that in every single successful application that I've worked on, these suggestions have been, we stuck to them, to the letter. They say they want 4 pages. We assume they know what they want. They've had, years of experience putting this together. And again, these work programs are the results of discussion and debates among very many different people from many different countries. And if they came to these conclusions, then you don't want to argue, because it's already been argued over. So you put your objectives and your ambition, and this is this is your big picture framework. This is what is it you want to do? Why is this so exciting, and what are you going to be doing? And then the methodology. This is, by the way, the part that the researcher is absolutely right, and you will be. I am shocked every single time at how badly the methodology is written. I'll be absolutely honest. And this is written by researchers who have experience, writing papers, and they know how to write a methodology. But they seem to think they're writing for, and I say this, with all the compassion and just pure sympathy and of a person who spent, many a wonderful day in Brussels. They assume they're writing for Brussels bureaucrats, and they don't tend to get into the technical detail. And that's wrong. You need to get into the technical detail. If you have 14 pages to write the methodology of your project, you want to write the methodology for your project. You don't want to say, oh, we'll use expensive equipment to do fun things. That's not what they're going for. That's not what they want to see. As you will see in the next presentation, the people who actually evaluate these proposals are experts in their area, and they will know. They are there to make sure that the methodology you proposed is sound, is cutting edge, and will get you to the objectives you have stated. You want to give all the detail you can and use up those 14 pages. And, this is not the place for fillers and waffling about, lots of adjectives that don't necessarily mean a lot. You absolutely get into the nitty gritty here and make sure it's well written and clear and concise. And then the research data management part. So it says here, and I left that, applicants generating, collecting data and or research outputs. If you're wondering, does that pertain to you as a social sciences or humanities researcher? It does. It absolutely does. The current thinking is that possibly the only researchers who don't generate or collect data are pure mathematicians and very theoretical physicists. And there's still debate around, whether equations are data or not. There's no need to get into that debate right now. But you definitely have data, whether, it's pieces, whether it's, literature you're working on, or whether it's art you're working on, or whether you're a sociologist and you're working with humans, you absolutely have data. The literature you're working on, that is data. And you definitely have research outputs, right? So you want to write up this research data management plan, and you need to apply the FAIR principles, which, again, this is not the time and place to go into details of what these things are. But there are people at your institution, usually in the library, who can help you with this. And please make use of them, because this is an important part of the application. You have one page to explain how are you going to make sure that all this data produced with tax-funded money effectively is going to be, how are the outputs going to contribute to either economic growth, because that's absolutely a viable option. That's a big part of what the European Commission wants. So you don't have to make everything open. That's also very important. The open science requirement, even though it's called that, does not mean you have to make everything open. But everything, for example, all the data underlying publications has to be made available. Not open necessarily, again, because sometimes you can't make data open, but it has to be available. And you have to explain how you're going to do that. Again, taxpayer money has been put into this. How are you going to make sure that the taxpayers get their money's worth, so to speak? Next is impact. Sorry, I feel like I'm really rushing through this, but I hope I'm not speaking too quickly is what I'm trying to say, but there's just so much. I could literally talk at you for days, and I have 30 minutes. So to keep going, there's impact. So that's the why. Why are you doing this? And that can be so many things. You have 4 pages for the pathways towards impact. So what is it? I mean, it's not just publications, right? That you can't just say, oh, we're going to publish it and other researchers are going to read it and it's going to have so much impact that way. That is not what Pillar 2 of and again, the cluster 2 is part of Pillar 2. That's not what that's about, right? Pure research is somewhere else. This is about impacting society, and you have to think about how you're going to do that. Are you going to work with business to make sure that whatever you're working on actually, makes its way towards the markets? Are you going to work with local governments? Are you going to work with national governments? Are you going to work with your local school board? What is it you're going to do that will make sure that whatever it is you're working on actually has real life impact? And then you have to think about the measures you're going to use to maximize your impact, right? How are you going to disseminate it, and how are you going to make sure it gets exploited and communicated? So in order to help you with this, the Commission has, this is again, paste and, well, actually screenshot from the actual application. And they have these nice little boxes for you where they tell you exactly what they want, and they give you examples. The application, actually, if you look at it and download it, all these things are available. The Commission is very transparent about it. All the terms used in the application are explained in the application itself. When you download the document, it looks really big because there's just so much writing in there in terms of, the Commission telling you what it is they want from you. They will give you examples, and they will give you prompting questions of what it is they want, right? So this is the needs, the results, and the dissemination and communication measures and exploitation. There's also, again, just to prod your thinking, there's target groups, there's outcomes where they give you examples of outcomes. For example, uptake by airports, right? But also high use of scientific discovery published. So they're giving you different examples. Importantly, also kind of real life outside of the ivory tower examples. And then the impacts, which can be very specific and can be less specific, right? So there's the scientific, but the economic one, right? 15% increase of maximum passenger capacity in European airports. That's a real impact. So you want to think about these things. You really, really want to think about these things and keeping in mind who's going to be evaluating it. And again, it's so wonderful that you get to, listen to an actual evaluator in about 10 minutes, who will give you insight into what it is that this evaluation project, what the evaluation process looks like. But also, these are experts in the field. By the way, you can actually download the list of evaluators for the previous years. It's publicly available on the internet. It's not a leaked document. It's, again, something that in the commission's, it's very focused on transparency, right? Their commitment to transparency includes publishing the list of evaluators. So you can actually go and look and see what areas these people evaluate, not which proposals they evaluated, but which areas and who they are. And you'll see that they are some of the top researchers in the world working on these. Not just from Europe, it's important, from all over the world. And if you're a researcher, you can, be on there as well. Anyone can sign up on the database. But okay, let's keep going because I'm just getting a little bit distracted here. Quality. This is the last part. This is part 3. This is quality and efficiency of implementation. So this is the how. And this is honestly where you need to make sure you're working with your colleagues that form the consortium. And this is irrespective of whether you are the leader of the consortium or just a participant in the consortium, right? You have to make sure that the work plan and resources are reasonably, not just reasonably, are perfectly assigned. To the best of your possibilities, you need to make sure that the work plan and the deliverables and the milestones, they all make sense. There's not too many, not too few. And the people working on them are the people who will get the job done and are the best in the world for this particular thing that you could find. That is how actually Canadian participants could participate in the previous framework, even though Canada wasn't associated to Horizon Europe, because there was just no one else they could find to do this as well. Canadian participation sometimes was funded because it's so important to get the best people. So you really want to think about this. And you have 14 pages for this. This is where the work plan, this is where the work packages, the so-called WPs come in. And you'll see that in terms of European projects, a lot of us talk about, work packages. That is almost the basic unit of a proposal. But the work packages all have to work together. And again, a work package can be divided and often is divided between different consortium partners. So this is the part, again, where the researchers really need to sit down and think about things. There's often a work package that is just administering the proposal. And that one is usually with the leader of the proposal. But the rest of them are usually technical. There might be a dissemination work package. Again, depends on how the project is designed. But the purely technical work packages definitely require a lot of input from researchers. And this is a chance you get to explain to your evaluators why this is the best consortium, right? You describe the capacity of the participants and the consortium as a whole. So first you look at all the pieces, and then you show why the pieces combined are greater as a whole. And this, you can't just paste and copy whatever your institution usually says about, how high it is in the rankings, and this is how many papers my group has published, and this is, the previous things we've done. No, this is specifically for what the commission has asked you to do in this particular topic. So these particular strengths in this particular area are what's important, and explaining how you all working together will get this done in a novel, cutting-edge way. So in the last 5 minutes or so, I'll just walk you through a few practical things, because I realize, for some of you, this might be the first time you're really digging into these applications. For some of you, it might not be. But I want to give you just some practical takeaways that, you'll log off today and you'll have some thoughts about what it is I can do. Mikołaj has showed you where to go and look for information. I just want to give you some other tips about what else you can do. So as we said, cluster 2 is very varied. And start by talking to your colleagues in Europe and to your research administrators. Please, I really encourage you to do that. As far as I know, I've spoken to institutions literally coast to coast across Canada. Everybody is thinking of Horizon Europe. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of money. Why wouldn't you think about it? There's a good chance somebody in your institution is already thinking about it. Go to research services, see who it is who can help you, and talk to your colleagues in Europe. Everyone's excited that Canada has joined Horizon Europe. You can literally just send an email to colleagues you already know who you've, so-called research friends, and just send them a message, really quick email saying, hey, if you're working on any Horizon Europe proposals or you're thinking of working on them, Canada is now an associate country. I can partner with you. And you'll be surprised at how often that will work. And it's so easy. It's literally 3 minutes of your time if you're a researcher. This is back to what Mikołaj has shown. Read the work program. Really see what's out there and see what it is that you could do. Whether you're a researcher or a research administrator, this is something, well, you definitely want to at least flip through the thing, but the more detail you know, the more likely it is you'll be prepared. Make sure you have both an international and local team. Again, harking back to everything I've been saying about research administrators, you absolutely need them. And, they are awesome people. They will help you. You are deeply unlikely, almost, impossibly unlikely to be successful without their help and without you guys working together and being a team on this. Follow the guidelines. And just really tick the boxes of what they're asking you to do. Absolutely be creative with the solutions you're coming up with, your application. Don't be creative in terms of, not doing what's being asked of you. That's not the way to go with these applications at all. Assume you're going to work on these things for a long time. And the first version should not be the final version. I have worked on Horizon, also in the previous framework, but Horizon applications that have had over 100 iterations. And I'm sorry if there were groans around Canada now when I said that, but that is the honest truth. Again, it's a lot of money. There are so many people. It's often multiple countries and even more institutions and different work cultures, different ideas. You send these things, you iterate, you come up with better ideas, you discuss, you get on calls, you have to arrange an appropriate time that works for everyone, and you discuss these things, and then at the end of the day, you might get millions of euros. But assume it's not a first draft kind of situation. You have to align work packages with milestones, with deliverables. That is a big part of the iterating and of convincing the commission, showing them you have ideas, very specific ideas on what you're going to achieve and how you're going to achieve that, and that there is a timeline that fits those ideas. And in terms of how you're going to do this, the researchers should do the methodology and most of the work packages. But honestly, reach out to your research services team for assistance with the rest. So impact and dissemination, a lot of that work is often done not by researchers. And it's honestly best often when it's not done by researchers, because researchers do research. They don't, that's literally what we pay them for often. That's where they're experts. They're not always, or not often even, experts at research dissemination, for example. That's why we need, or you as a potential applicant, whether in a lead or as a partner institution, all of you will need to contribute to ideas, how to disseminate and how to make sure there's impact. So you need your team there because, again, these grants are institutional and not personal. Here are some resources. I'm not going to go into that. I have no time. But if you have an internet connection, as I'm assuming you do, you can just go and look at these things yourself. Some of them Mikołaj has mentioned. Some of them are just will give you further information on different aspects of the proposal. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to take questions in the Q&A and the open session later.
Thank you, Maria. It was a very crash course, I would say. But I hope it was helpful because we really need to understand the thinking behind the application itself. So when we were thinking about this webinar, we thought that what really matters is to understand not only how to choose your topic, how to read the work program in the most efficient way, or how to get organized for the application, but also how your project will be evaluated. And this is a very important element of the Horizon Europe and all the framework programs, actually. So let me introduce Taina Valat-Omland, our expert in evaluation for Cluster 2. We are very lucky to have him with us. He has a background in design studies and comes to us with nearly 15 years of evaluation experience, obviously in various EU framework programs, and he is specifically expert in Cluster 2. Please, Taina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Agni. I will also share my slides here and hope that we are on the same page. Well, good morning to you in Canada. Somehow I guess I could make this very short by if you just do everything that Maria said, you're home free. But I'll try to go through a few of the considerations that we make as evaluators and to try to point to some of the things that can actually determine whether you are funded or not. So I'll start by just giving you the big picture of what an evaluation process is and what we actually do. Then go through the evaluation criteria, very much parallel to the presentation of how you write a good proposal, including the cross-cutting areas. And then, while there are formal criteria and very specific issues that we need to relate to as evaluators, there are also discussions going on amongst us, which are not necessarily written down anywhere. And I think it's important that you also know what they are. So the big picture, well, there are basically three core types. There are research and innovation actions. There are pure innovation actions. And then there is the so-called coordination and support actions. Clearly, the amount of research varies a lot between them. And in the Cluster 2 domain, and especially in the cultural, creative industries domain, we will see a number of calls which are either IA, CSA, or research and innovation actions, but where the research part is not necessarily the dominant one. So, and as already mentioned earlier, in this domain, the TRL scale is very often in the higher end. So we see a lot of calls where you ask for an innovation going from TRL 5 to 7. You never see ground research in this kind of calls. It's applied research if there is any at all. The evaluation process, very briefly, is that when the Commission has received a X number of proposals, they do the sort of first screening to see if all the formal criteria has been met, but also if the proposal is actually in scope, meaning that it is a sort of a response to the call that has been put out. The battlefield very often is a mixture of a very small portion of excellent proposals, a very small portion of really, really hopeless proposals, and then there's this big field of very sensible and well-crafted, but not necessarily excellent proposals. And the reality is that we don't spend a lot of time on the mediocre and the hopeless ones. We are extremely focused as evaluators on the best proposals, making sure that the best proposal is put on the top of the list. And then if there is funding for more than one, because sometimes there's actually only one proposal being funded, sometimes two, sometimes three, but our job is fundamentally just to make sure that the right proposals are given the fund they seek, which means that we spend a lot of time discussing very nitty-gritty details in the proposals that we have already identified as being strong and of actually contributing to the domain. The marginals, we do work with scoring from 0 to 5, and I come back to that. But at the end of the day, when there is a field of, let's say, 50 proposals, and 2 of them will be funded, and about 10% in average are excellent proposals, then it means that 5 really, really good proposals will fight for 2 buckets of money, if you want. And that means that they are really, really down to the marginals of what makes one proposal win, while the other one is left on the station. It's not bad. It can be excellent, but there is perhaps this small and very often not easily identifiable factor that makes it pass the needle's eye. And somehow, perhaps a little banal, but it's also about X factor. It's about making sure that we can see what this is all about. The evaluators, who are they? Well, I'm an expert, yeah. We are all experts at something. Putting together a team of evaluators must be difficult because in a call, you can have perhaps 10 or 15 different research areas represented. So even though I know that the aim is to cover all the areas in the call, that is not possible. So when you write proposals, just to add to Maria's, do not take for granted that they know your specific research area down to the minutest detail. They know the field, they know the domain, but you have to explain your proposal, your ideas in a way so that someone who is informed, but not necessarily an expert, can also understand it, and so that we can discuss it amongst us. It's already been mentioned that there are 3 evaluation criteria: excellence, impact, and pathways to maximize impact, and quality of implementation. And then there are the cross-cutting area criteria, which are very often a part of the excellence criteria built in there. But it's also important to say the evaluation criteria are not identical from call to call. These 3 headings are there always, but underneath each, there might be small variations depending on the objectives of the call and also what kind of program we're in and the size of the grant. I will try to give you an impression of the individual criteria, but first, the scoring scale. As you can see, we give all proposals a score between 0 and 5. Most often there are 3 evaluators, and we read and score the proposals individually. And then we meet either virtually or in real life I'm getting dark here because of Google Home, which is very creative today. But we can score sometimes very, very differently. And when we meet, our job is to discuss a compromise and find a score that everyone can be comfortable with. That means that a proposal can be scored between 3 and 5, or 2 or 5, by 3 different evaluators. For most calls, there is a threshold, meaning that to be eligible for funding, you need to have a minimum of 10 as a combined score. That is perhaps not so interesting when it comes to, because I have never ever been part of an evaluation where a proposal got funded with less than 12.5. So we're really up in the very good to excellent bracket to be considered at all to be funded. When it comes to the excellence criteria, all proposals should demonstrate that there is scope and pertinent to the call. That was also mentioned before. If you do not respond to all the criteria mentioned in the call, you're basically disqualified yourself. When that is already proven, you have to present a very clearly captured concept, a concept that anyone can understand, and some clearly overall goals, objectives, and also a clear and very sort of easy to understand backdrop. Why is this project important? Why will it give value both to the consortium partners and to its target groups and to society at large? Maria talked about the methodologies. We talk very much more about the sort of the components of a proposal. So what is the level of ambition, novelty, and ingenuity, and how is that sort of unfolded in the way that this is actually sort of planned for the 3 years it will be working? The methodologies have to be well tested, but they also have to be novel. The most important, though, is that they are recognizable by the evaluators, that they can understand what is it exactly that you plan on doing, and how is it that these actions will underpin your objectives and your goals, and how is it that this is going to sort of lead to the impact that we come to in a second. And in terms of excellence, remember, be realistic in terms of indicators. Do not try to convince us evaluators that you will save the world or cure cancer or whatever it is you want to do. Small steps are much more convincing to us than large sort of overturning results. When it comes to the impact that you envisage has to be well-defined, convincing, but you also have to point clearly to how is it that you are foreseeing that you will achieve this impact, the so-called pathways. Every goal that you list under impacts has to be paired with a credible and sound KPI. And then perhaps just as importantly, you have to be realistic that all your goals will not be fulfilled. So what will you do? What kind of mitigation actions and what kind of contingencies do you have if things do not go exactly as you have dreamt of? It's a risk analysis and sensible mitigation strategies is among probably one of the most important singular components in being rejected. If you haven't demonstrated a clear plan for how to deal with resistance, then you have not convinced us that this is a robust project. There are these three terms: exploitation, communication, and dissemination. Exploitation is basically how do you foresee that the partners and the target groups and the European Union or society at large will benefit from this, short-term, mid-term, and long-term. When it comes to this section, very often dissemination and communication is mixed up. One of the things that can easily sort of put you in the wrong bracket is that if you haven't made a clear distinction between the audiences that you will be addressing, so meaning the research community or your professional communities and public at large. So it's extremely important to have a clear distinction between dissemination and communication. And if it's not, it will be penalized by the evaluators. And then we get to the third criteria, which is the quality of implementation. And this is where we really start discussing nitty-gritty sort of robustness of the project. Does the work plan as an overall plan give us a clear sense of management, order, contingencies, and also are the actions listed paired with reasonable and sensible resources? This is basically the strategy for how to reach the goals that you have set out in your proposal. And there are really many fall traps here, and especially related to the resources, both in terms of man hours, how tasks are being divided between partners, and also that we see a clear management responsibility for all the work packages and the milestones and the deliverables and so on. And then we have the cross-cutting criteria, which have been mentioned, and we talked a lot about SSH in the beginning, the social sciences and humanities. There is the open science, which is, as Maria said, there's no requirement that everything is open source, but you have to address it, and you have to be very clear about how data and your findings will be dealt with. And then there's the gender dimensions, which is very much about how gender will be dealt with in the research and development work, not so much about whether there are 4 or 5 female researchers on the project. Those are the sort of the formal criteria. But as I said, we make sure that you live up to all the formal criteria, that everything can be checked, but then there are the discussions, and the discussions are much more sort of loose, and they're not based on any formal requirements, but on our gut feeling and our experience as evaluators, but also as project partners. All of us have been in EU projects. We've been there. We've tested what it's all about. So I have a little list of these. One, convergence. Make sure that everything you write underpins the objectives in the call text. Do not diverge. Just like Maria said, do not be creative there. Be very prudent that everything you write is aligned with the objectives of the call. Context. Very often you might fall in the trap that you you take for granted that we as evaluators know exactly the area that you will be working within. We do not. It has to be presented, and you also have to prove to us that you know your area, that you understand it, and that you have a real-life experience from the context in which the work will take place. Clarity. Nothing speaks for itself. Spell things out. Make sure that you are not taking for granted that we know the lingo that you use in your research team. We don't. So be very simple and clear in your language. And if something could be misunderstood, make sure that it's explained in language that everyone can understand. Credibility. Make sure that all the claims that you make are credible. Unless you can either support them by evidence or at least by very strong argument, we will almost by default say, why do they actually think that they can reach that? For us, it sounds too good to be true. If something is too good to be true, well, then it's not very likely that the European Union will fund it with 3 or 4 or 5 million euros. Control. Make sure that you have clarified in the proposal exactly what kind of control mechanisms you have to monitor and audit progress as you move along. Very often projects are 3-year long, sometimes even 5, and it's extremely important that all the way throughout that period of time that you have dedicated the resources and described exactly how you will monitor a process. And again, contingencies, identify barriers, risks, both internal and external factors that may entail changes to the original plan. And what do you do then? Describe it in detail, because we know that things will not go exactly as you had planned. That's acceptable, but we need to know what you will do when that occurs. And then perhaps one of the most important things, coherence. If you have said something in your excellence part or in the impact section, make sure that it's also reflected in the implementation section with a responsible person, with resources, with a work package that actually contains that specific action that you have indicated in the earlier sections. Consortium. Why is it that you 4, 5, 10, 15 partners are the right ones for each other and for this project? It's not about formal credentials always. It's also about how you actually complement each other as domains, as universities, or as companies, as partners. But make it clear for us why the consortium is the optimal construction. And then credentials. Make sure that we are convinced based on what you've already done, on your achievements, on your credentials until now. It's important that we get a clear and strong gut feeling that, hey, these guys know what they're talking about. And it seems like they really, really thought this through. That is perhaps just as, or even more important sometimes than the technicalities of a proposal. It is very much about us 3 evaluators understanding that, hey, this is really something special. This is going to be great. That feeling is what you want to achieve with us. If you do that, then you have a pretty good chance of ending up in the top 3, which is very often the key to being funded. Finally, make sure that you have a robust outreach strategy from the very beginning and make the proposal writing the sort of the starting point for that. I won't talk more about the cross-cutting issues. I will only say thousands of researchers and others are working full-time on writing proposals in Europe every day. Very, very few are being funded. So when you invest your time and your talents and your knowledge in doing this. Do it right. Make sure that you have checked all the boxes, and then make sure that you do it in a way which is not only technically right, but also feels right for someone who is not an expert. A little piece of advice before you submit a proposal: make someone who is informed, intelligent, sympathetic to you read it and come back with a semi-professional evaluation, because there's a lot of inspiration to get in someone who could have been an evaluator reading it before you send it off. That could save you that annoying experience of being number 4 when 3 proposals were funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Steiner. That was really very informative. I hope that it gave our audience the flavor of the evaluation process, which is very different, I must say, from what we had here in Canada. And with this, I think that we will move to our last panel. This is a panel this time, not a presentation. We thought that it is actually important to hear from the researchers themselves, from the people who went through this process and won a project. So I would like to welcome Professor Eleonora Montuschi from the Department of Philosophy at the University of Venice Ca' Foscari in Italy. Eleonora is a professor of philosophy of science. And she has been the leader of a very big Horizon project, Inclusive Science and European Democracies, which I think just ended. And with her is her partner in consortium, Professor Bogna Gawrońska-Nowak, from the University of Economics in Krakow, but she's also the head of the Eurodata department at the Institute of Urban and Regional Development in Warsaw. So I would like to ask you a few questions, and that will hopefully help our audience understand what was your experience with the Horizon Europe project. So, Eleonora, I will start with you. Could you tell us why, when you decided that this is the time for you to actually write a proposal, to embark on this daunting adventure? And how did you go about creating a consortium, actually?
Right. Well, thank you very much for having me, first of all. Well, why have I decided to be a leader of Horizon 2020? That was a question I asked myself many times, believe me, over the 3.5 years of the project. But more seriously, well, I hadn't been new to being part of large projects. I mean, I was part of a big Templeton Foundation project, an HRC project, before by previous university, the London School of Economics. I was also part of an ERC Advanced, but never as a PI, never as a principal investigator. So I thought that I had reached a stage in my career that I have enough experience, and indeed the curiosity. You need a lot of that, the curiosity to run a project myself, and a project of this size. Of course, I also had the belief, and I do hold the belief, that academic work goes more and more in the direction of doing joint research, which doesn't exclude, of course, pursuing individual research. It just, I would say, aptly complemented, right, by putting what we do in our everyday academic work in a wider context. I should also add that universities, at least in Europe, put us under real pressure when it comes to large grants, because of course they benefit quite a lot from them, and especially because there is so much more and more limited funding, public funding, that goes in the direction of academia. So university push was also an incentive to become a leader. As far as this particular call that I responded to, well, I found the topic particularly attractive, out of a range of several. It was a project on developing deliberative and participatory democracy through experimentation. I had some ideas, some general vision of how to go about approaching this topic. Although, immediately I realized that turning a general idea into a European project ready for submission was a completely different kind of thing. We heard during this meeting that the overall structure of Horizon project is very complicated. It's built on very, very tight blocks, on timelines, on deadlines, and I should also add it is particularly tricky for people like me coming from the humanities. I am a philosopher by training, but I soon realized that I had to find a way to make the conceptual work, which is the way I do things in my line of work, engage with empirical research. And in fact, this was the first challenge that I faced with this project and as a leader. I had to build a team that included different types of expertise across different types of disciplines and also beyond the traditional academic disciplines. I had to involve practitioners coming from a world away from academia. And at the same time, I had to make sure that the people were able and be willing also to speak to each other, right? And try to understand what everybody said, what everybody did. And this came even before trying to figure out how to turn my team into a coherent whole, apt to do research in the way that it was expected. So how did I approach? I mean, one of the questions I think it's interesting to pursue is how did I approach this task of building a consortium? Well, of course, it was done in stages. In a first stage, and well in advance of applying for the Horizon project, I got some seed money, a grant from my university under this scheme, which is called SPIN, Supporting Principal Investigators. And this was quite important because it is a scheme that is still running in my university, with the aim of helping researchers like me to write a European grant proposal. So it was really very, very important. So from the start, I used part of this seed money to appoint a temporary assistant, and together we just worked on writing the proposal together, which included a lot of tasks from started thinking of how to articulate the topic, what angles to cover, and then choosing the types of expert that we needed. So gradually and little by little, identifying the network of people that we required. And I should also add here that I had great help also from the research division in my university. I mean, the admin people who are dedicated to research and helping researchers were really very important, not only actually at the beginning, but all the way through the project. So how did I identify the people for the consortium? Well, some were colleagues I knew from before, people I trusted, people I liked working with, which is not important. Some were people that were suggested to me by other colleagues. In some cases, I just looked at institutions that seemed to offer the right kind of expertise, the right kind of help, and also they appeared solid enough to be able to deliver the goods, to deliver the research products. And in some cases, I must say, people introduced themselves, right? They heard about our project or this idea that we had in mind, and they declared their interest in being part of writing the project. For example, this happened in Bratislava, where we took part in this EU Societies Brokerage event, which was organized in, I think it's 2018 or 19. And there, we presented our project. We also put some ad in some kind of online, what was it called, marketplace profile or something like this. And people saw us, right? And I believe this is how we got to know Bogna, for example, who became one of our partners. And also this is how we met our extra-European partner, became a partner in our project, the Minister of Education in Uruguay. So, it's a mixture of sources to put the consortium together. So that's the first stage. The second stage, once you have identified a group of potential partner, then you think, well, we must really figure out whether we can work together. So we thought it would have been useful to meet in person, right? And get to know each other. So again, in December 2019, so pre-pandemic, we organized a meeting in Venice. So I used the last money in my seed research grant, and I invited all the prospective partners. And so we were interested partly to find out what people worked on and how their work could feed into the overall theme of the call. And also to see, to kind of brainstorm and see how we could sort of start thinking of how to articulate the project according to the kind of application form provided by the EU. And the meeting, I think, was quite successful. We indeed did kind of 1 day of a workshop in which we got to know each other and our individual expertise, et cetera, and then a second day where we did some planning. And that brought us to the final stage when we kind of finalized the consortium. We allocated individual prospective partners to the various work packages. We chose the leaders for each work package. We asked them to write or suggest how to write their work package, identify the tasks that they were meant to implement within their work packages, and then discuss the budgets with the admin people behind the partners, etc., etc. I should also add one thing. I don't know whether it was mentioned before or not. In putting together our consortium, we paid a lot of attention to gender balance, which was praised a lot by our reviewers and by the Commission. We also paid attention to what I could call academic age. So we had a mixture in our consortium among researchers. So we wanted some senior, well-established researchers, but also young researchers and postdocs, et cetera, et cetera. And also we paid attention to geographical spread. So what countries in Europe should take part in the project. So not only Central Europe, but a kind of a variety of countries. Right. Let me just add one comment about whether I learned any lessons from implementing the project, or what there are a few things that I would like to stress as important. Well, the first important thing that I feel that I should emphasize is the importance to count on a good project manager in a project like Horizon. And we were fortunate enough to have an excellent project manager. And a project manager in a project like this is not only the person who keeps the books, who kind of keeps the budget under control, but it's also the person who day by day makes sure that deadlines are met, that deliverables are turned in timely, that events are organized properly, the practical issues that arise every single day during these projects are dealt with and are resolved in the kind of quickest and most efficient way. Of course, this doesn't mean that the PM does it all by herself or himself. They work in concert with the principal investigator. They also count normally on a kind of solid admin support from the host institution, which is, these people are also very, very important. But, having a person like a project manager in place allows, I think, the coordinator of the project to focus more on content implementation. So on delivering what, in terms of research, was promised in the research proposal. So I would say the first thing to stress here is make sure that in the coordinator's budget, there is enough money for a dedicated project manager. This is money well spent. And there are examples, even in my university, where this was not done, and projects actually relied on occasional help, and this doesn't work. It's a disaster. Okay, the second thing the second thing I'd like to stress is the importance, and something that I've learned is the importance of keeping everyone on board, right, and in the loop. These projects, we said it over and over again, are very large. I had 12 partners in my consortium. Each partner had their own teams, including third parties and consultants and a whole host of postdocs, etc., etc. So it's a large group, all in all. And it was important, I think, especially for me as a coordinator, to create an environment where the different partners could feel to be part of a joint research endeavor, right? So they were not just there and paid to do their own things, their own individual research. And this was a huge challenge, believe me. Some people had experience of large interdisciplinary projects, but others did not at all. But as a coordinator, you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody do their own bit. And that's why the various general project meetings that we are asked to organize more or less every 6 months, I think, proved so important, because little by little they allowed to fill with content the structure of the project. So making sure that everybody's contributions would fit in. Right, and it was important within the overall architecture of the project. Let me just mention one very, very quick thing. Our huge, the biggest challenge we had was indeed COVID-19. So we started the project right at the beginning of the pandemic, and that made things quite tricky for us. But indeed, again, there was a lesson to learn here. Don't give up, right? Be flexible. Think outside the box to make things happen no matter what. even if there is some kind of unpredictable things coming your way. And I must say that the Commission was actually very, very receptive, very helpful, and it made it easier for us to carry on with the project, even in the darkest kind of days possible. So it was an important lesson to learn, and something that hopefully none of you should factor in having a pandemic in the near future. But as I said, the lesson is be flexible, be creative, and be proactive. Okay.
Thank you so much. This is actually the lesson for the risk management part of the proposal, isn't it? Now I will turn to Bogna to share her experience from the partner perspective. So Bogna, tell us why have you agreed to participate in this particular consortium? And then we are also curious how you define your role as a partner. And what were your lessons learned?
Thank you, Agnieszka, and thank you for having me. So, I think that in the case of why me personally and my team, we joined this consortium led by Eleonora, that was a kind of combination of my own research interests, a certain type of, I would say, willingness to explore something more, but the combination of this and institutional maturity as well. I think that the institutional maturity plays quite an important role. By institutional maturity, I understand eagerness, capacity, willingness, objectively defined ability of institution to be active in that type of research and that type of projects on all levels, especially, I would say, again, referring to administration support, which is essential. So in my case, it was kind of combination. I became a head of department at the Institute of Urban and Regional Development in Warsaw. And in fact, it was a kind of natural next step for me to develop research, international research, in fact. So again, a natural direction was to go a bit farther to explore more. Well, I want to refer to Maria's remark. She said something about choosing the right consortium, which was actually repeated many times afterwards. I want to say that, yes, it's very important to understand the role of a partner and seeking consortium as something that requires certain proactivity. So looking for an optimal, perfect consortium means that, you really want to find someone reliable in terms of PI of this consortium. So certainly with a certain track record, research excellence, but also it's very important how the things are organized. As Eleonora mentioned, for me, quite, I would say, important was that we had a face-to-face meetings. We had some prep workshops conducted together, and the way we actually organize our research, so with our active role in co-designing this research. And yes, indeed, that was especially important for me, because Eleonora was a new person to me, and we have never collaborated before. So this brokerage meeting that Eleonora referred to when she was discussing how, in fact, she was reaching out to some partners, this brokerage meeting, in fact, was that opportunity that brought us together. So, in fact, I had to mitigate the risk reaching out to a proper consortium through, just having the checkpoints on my list, whether the institution and the person is reliable. So, and I just want to say that for me, this European Horizon is very much about looking for new opportunities and looking for new partners, so taking some risks, so understanding how to mitigate that. Okay. I want to say a bit more about maybe co-designing the research, about some very practical aspects of that. Well, co-designing research means taking responsibility of drafting the proposal as well. So in our case, me and my team, we read the call specification, the call description. We found one of this especially appealing to us. We had that, we visited Bratislava brokerage meeting. We presented small piece of our research that in our understanding fit quite well with the call description. It was all about polarization study, okay? And then as a natural consequence, when the prep workshop was organized in Venice by Eleonora, well, we took care especially of that particular piece of, I would say, our research design, well, referring to the polarization study, discussing methodological aspects of that and so on. So we were very active in that, I would say, from the beginning till the end. Right. And I want also to stress out, maybe I didn't mention that before, it might be important for you, all other listeners, all our viewers, that, well, of course, PI, as Eleonora is the key person, and it's highly appreciated. And it is, well, it's nice to have it in CV. But I must say that, well, on a country level, when you are, for example, work package coordinator or task coordinator, it is, I would say, very well recognized and appreciated, okay? So if we are talking in detail is about the personal motivation, I can say that having that kind of role, active role in research in a project like that is good simply for your CV, for your recognition. Now, talking about the main lessons for the project implementation. Well, I want really to stress out that Horizons are for people who really enjoy joining an interdisciplinary or even multidisciplinary projects. So you must have that kind of openness to actually do it and to be prepared to that. And I think that if you like it, if you open enough to do it, then you would be highly appreciated. You will really be enjoying what you're doing. And I think that, for example, for me, I think I became a bit better researcher, being confronted with that type of research challenges. Another, well, I'd say, strong point for me, that was building a community around the research that we did together. And by community, I really want to say that that's not only about researchers. Particularly our research project was very much about the citizen science, right? So, in fact, how to bring people on board together with us on doing research. We know that there is a serious issue of trusting researchers, trusting experts, trusting scientists. So, well, for us, especially, I think it was really important that we're having other actors other than simply academic institutions on board, NGOs, well, policymakers. And I think that, well, that required from us a certain type of communicating with those actors. And that's what I also learned to an extent being part of that project. And again, maybe the third important lesson is that you really need to have a very strong institutional backup. I mean, support. If you do not have it, I don't think that actually going smoothly through that type of project would be possible. And I'm afraid that we are a bit running out of time, so probably stop at that moment, and I'll take all questions in the chat.
Thank you, Popałka. We are a little bit running, late, but I didn't want to stop you because you were actually answering some questions that we have in the Q&A already written there. So I think that was the time well spent. So I will not have follow-up questions, but then I would like to move immediately to the Q&A session. We have around 20 minutes for that. How would that work? You can raise your hand and then you will have the opportunity to ask the question on the open mic. However, I also noted some questions in the Q&A that I thought it might be useful to answer them online on mic. So I propose I start with a few of them, and I will indicate a speaker who might want to take the question. So the question that was asked by Elizabeth Russell-Minda, can funded consortia change during the life of the proposal years? For example, can partners drop off and can partners then be added? Or is it more or less established at the time of funding? And this is the question that I would like to ask to Mikołaj, if he would like to take it.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka, for this question. I mean, the rules for participation in Horizon Europe are flexible, of course, and situations happen that certain partners may, for some reasons not known at the beginning of the project, be able to stand back, stand down, quit the consortium. So I could imagine if the coordinator or the whole team is capable of finding a partner with a similar set of skills who can provide the same amount of quality of work. And of course, it is agreed with the European Commission's project officer, then such a change might happen. But truth to be told, I haven't heard of many such cases. So usually the decision, to join the proposal is backed up with analysis that every organization has capacities, both personal and financial, to do the work until the end of the project.
Thank you. So I have another question from the chat. It was asked an hour ago almost. For those of us that are not used to top-down granting, if none of the current open calls seem like a good match to our research, are there still opportunities to collaborate? How would one go about doing that? Especially if a call is somewhat interesting and we can see some potential how it aligns with some of our existing research, but it's clearly not a perfect match. So I turn this question to Maria, but also to Bogna, actually. Would you like to answer that?
Thank you, Agnieszka. I think, the devil is in the details. You say it's not exactly aligned. I think my question is it a 15% miss or a 50% miss? Because can I just say that, Eleonora and Bogna's speeches were wonderful and so eloquent. And I really think Bogna will probably have more to say on this. But in my experience, if you can show you have experience in this particular area and you need to, for example, tweak your population or tweak some of your methodologies, then sure, go for it. Again, that's why the work program is published earlier. However, if it's not a matter of tweaking, but a matter of really just turning around and doing something completely different, then probably you're not the perfect partner for this particular project. As both Steiner has said, and as again, Eleonora and Bogna have described, it is very much a process of fitting the right people and putting the right consortium together for exactly what the Commission asked about, and then convincing the Commission that these are the right people. So if there is potential to convince an audience that you are the right person, go for it. But again, question is, can you convince them? Thank you.
I can agree very much with what Maria said, and I would say that proving a kind of competence and excellence in focus research area is essential, I would say. So maybe this question a bit refers to how innovative we can be in drafting the proposal, and I would suggest a moderate level of innovation. Maybe that sounds a bit, I don't know, but awkward. But the truth is that, well, that must be well-balanced proportion of what we can show in terms of how credible, how competent we are, and well, that added value certainly is more than expected. I mean, that kind of innovative something, right? But it must be very well documented. I mean, it must be really supported. Well, the roots when it comes from, right? So not sure if I'm answering that question in a complex way, but I think that quite a big portion of a research proposal belongs to, well, showing us as credible and competent in what we are promising to deliver later on.
Thank you, Bogna. Steinar, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is one of the things that will raise a flag among evaluators. If there is one partner who is not well argued and whose contribution is not obvious to the evaluators, it will probably not be marked as a no-go, but it could very easily be marked as a shortcoming if that argument and the reason for a partner to be in a consortium is not very well argued. And I would say if there are partners in a consortium who come across as sort of funding seeking more than competence giving, then that can easily be a sort of game changer for a proposal. So I would be very careful about inviting someone in whose role is not very clearly argued.
Thank you. So I have another question from the chat. It is basically a question: what establishes a partnership? And I wanted to hear from you from the perspective of, strictly administrative view. So this is where I will ask maybe Maria to help us answer that question. And then I will also direct it to Eleonora, what was her experience in what establishes really the partnership. Maria, if you could.
Sorry, I wasn't clear which one of us was supposed to go first. So I think on the admin level, that there's a consortium agreement, and that is how the partnership is kind of sealed. But I'm not quite sure if that is what the question was about, whether it was about establishing a partnership as in, the meet and greet and getting to know each other, or actually how it is formally sealed. And the consortium agreement is definitely the formal part. I think, as Eleonora and Bogna have mentioned, and all of us have mentioned during our talks, there are very many ways to initiate a partnership, if that is also meant by establishing. It's, everything through the internet, brokerage events, online brokerage events, announcements about specific projects. And just, I think that was very valuable. The word of mouth suggestion, that is something that happens a lot. So I think, that there's a whole plethora of options available. And yeah, I don't think there's one answer to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Eleonora?
And just add one quick comment. What establishes the partnership is what you want to achieve somehow, what kind of objectives you have. And once you have the objectives, even drafted in a kind of in general terms to start with, then you start going about selecting the types of experts that you want. And then, from there, you build the partnership. And again, paying attention, as I said before, to respect a balance between people who do, strictly speaking, more conceptual or theoretical work, and people who are more into empirical research, experimental research, etc. And create some kind of connection, making sure that the two sides, at least this is my experience in my project, that the two sides really talk to each other and their expertise feed onto each other. So, you do conceptual work, but you want to be informed by empirical research, and equally, people engaged in empirical research might have the curiosity and should have the curiosity of kind of putting their research in a kind of more theoretical conceptual framework. But again, I'm not sure whether I'm answering the question, which was formulated in a bit of a general way.
Thank you. We had quite a lot of questions also regarding the definition of gender, which is very different in the EU context and the Canadian context. So we had a question, really, what is the role of the diversity and how to define gender in the proposal. And I wanted to ask maybe Mikołaj and maybe Steinar to have a go at that. This is basically the clarification.
Yes,
Yeah,
I can start,
do.
but I must tell that I am really not an expert on those issues. So what I could really only propose is that maybe gender issues could be a part of your networking events that you want to organize, because they are quite crucial in general for Horizon Europe, and it's somehow a very complex issue that has to be taken into consideration when preparing proposals. But I am in no means an expert, so I will pass on this question. Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Well, I can add a few comments on it. Gender is sort of represented two different places in the evaluation. There is the gender in research, which is part of the excellence evaluation, one of the cross-cutting issues that was already mentioned, so that there is a clearly defined or considerations around the impact on the research or innovation, the outcomes, if they are related to gender, and also of other identities, if that is part of the scope of the project. So there is the sort of in gender in the substance of the project, and the other thing is gender in the consortium. But that is something which is evaluated as part of the implementation criteria. So if it's a very one gender dominant consortium, that will be noted in the quality of the consortium, and could very easily entail a sort of a cut in score. But so it's something we look at, but there are no specific rules for how many percentages of which gender or of other representations should be present. It's again an assessment of whether this seems fair and reasonable, but in the content part, it's very linked to specifically what is it that this project is trying to solve of research or of innovation.
Okay, we have more questions. Now, I think that what is interesting, I find here a question. Can you please explain the specific roles that the Canadian researchers are eligible to occupy in this opportunity? Can they serve as PIs, consortium members? Do you think a Canadian-led consortium would be a disadvantage? And this is, I think I would direct that question to Maria. And then if Steinar wanted to add, that is also welcome.
Hi. Yes, just on gender, I agree with Mikołaj that perhaps it's worth a presentation of its own. There are, whole people who specialize just in the gender aspect of Horizon Europe proposals. What's more, institutions have DEI experts on their team who specialize specifically in gender and how to incorporate gender into Horizon Europe applications. And I've seen the questions as well. I know that there's definitely a somewhat almost intellectual or philosophical discord between how DEI is perceived in Canada and by the European Commission. So I do think that there's room for more explanations there. But as for your question, there absolutely Canadian researchers can be PIs. There's nothing to stop them from leading proposals. I know for a fact that there are institutions in Canada considering, who are currently considering or in the process of submitting applications with their researchers as PIs. I think there's something to be said for experience in leading proposals. Now, it's obviously Canadian institutions won't have a lot of experience with Horizon Europe proposals or projects for obvious reasons. However, a track record in leading large international multidisciplinary projects, I think, is absolutely essential if you're considering leading a Horizon Europe proposal. Talking to different colleagues, we sometimes have discussions about, should Canadians lead in the first year, should they not? I really think there's a lot to be said for joining an existing consortium and being a partner and kind of learning the ropes and learning how to actually, what does it actually mean to participate in this kind of project? It is, yes, it's a large international project, but it's a very specific large international project. I'm not sure if I answered the question. I feel I don't want to be telling people yes or no either way, honestly. I think if you're considering this, you need to be aware. Just as Eleonora has said, it is a lot of work to do this. And if your institution doesn't yet necessarily have the experience to support you with doing it, it might be that much harder. But I would be very hesitant from telling Canadians not to apply, Canadian-based researchers. There are so many incredible researchers here and so many incredible research institutions that I personally, and this is my personal opinion, I would feel hesitant saying, don't apply just yet, or don't lead just yet. Definitely apply as a partner, but don't necessarily consider leading. That's sort of, again, my personal opinion.
I would say very briefly that as an evaluator, we wouldn't even discuss the pertinence of a Canadian or any other non-European lead partner if we are convinced that they have the capacity to do it. When it comes to Canadian representation as one or several consortium members, I would say that especially in this domain, we would probably see it as an advantage because it is very much about cultural cross-pollination and to get new angles and new inspiration on issues where coming from somewhere else is an advantage in itself. So I would say yes, be open to any kind of collaboration with European consortia and take on the lead role if you feel that you have, or if the entire consortium feels that you have the capacity. We don't care as evaluators as long as we feel that this is trustworthy.
Thank you. And I think we have to actually wrap up. So I will only ask very last question, I think, or two very short ones. So one was specifically for Eleonora about the how much seed funding is available at your institution for developing a Horizon Europe project. And that will be followed by a question to Steinar. Are projects written by professional consultants well received or even more successful? Please, Eleonora first.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how things are at the moment, but when I applied, there were a number of these grants and they varied. And the amount was between, I think, 20,000 to 60,000 euros. I mean, something in that range. And I think in the end, I got about 50,000, something like this. So it's not huge money, but I mean, it's not little either. So it allows you to do a few things with that. You can go and meet your prospective partners. You can organize an event, where you can invite people in the prospective consortium. Or as I did, I also hired somebody who could help me, assist me in writing the proposal. As I said, right now I'm not sure. I mean, I know that the scheme is still active, but I'm not sure how much money they have and they're actually putting towards this. And it's something that is just limited to my university. I mean, it's not a kind of national scheme. It's just my university is quite keen on promoting this kind of activity, research activities. So it's willing to help.
Thank you. We are, of course, aware that there are countries where in Europe where such national schemes actually exist to support the researchers on the more national level. I think that Poland is actually one of them. Okay, Steinar.
Very briefly, we appreciate well-crafted proposals, and whether that it has been done by the institutions or the consortia themselves or by having someone help them, we do not distinguish as such. I would say that there is a danger in using professional consultants because they do not have the same sort of matter-of-factly knowledge as you have. So don't leave the entire responsibility to them, but there's no problem in having them involved. What I would say, though, is that more and more applications or proposals are written by AI. Be careful, because where it is written by AI, we see easily that there are glitches, and they reveal too much to ignore. So I would say that until now, I don't think that we have passed any proposal that we could identify as AI written, simply because it was too obvious that there were glitches in it, and that really doesn't help you. So use AI to the extent that it's reasonable and sensible, but never leave the responsibility neither to AI nor to professional consultants.
Thank you. I see there are some other questions, but we really have to close. So I wanted to thank you, all of you, our speakers, for really engaging webinar. And I can only promise that we will explore all these questions in even more detail. In the upcoming webinars, we will have 5 more, each one for each cluster. And then right now I would like to ask Kostas Kapsouropoulos, the Digital and Science Counselor from the delegation of the European Union in Canada, to close our event.
First of all, a big thanks on behalf of the European Union delegation to Canada to all of you, to the speakers, to the organizers, to all the participants with their questions. Really, it was a first experience for me. It was a very nice one, and I hope it was informative for everybody. 3 key messages and 3 key takeaways that I took from this first webinar. First of all, fresh ideas and out-of-the-box ideas. That's what we are searching for through the calls. Second, excellence. The criterion of excellence is the selection procedure. I was very, very happy and delighted to hear one researcher, one speaker, who said that the selection process made her a better researcher. And third, interdisciplinarity, because one call needs the unity of science, the coherence of scientific findings, to have a collective and good and balanced result. These are the 3 key takeaways for me, but that's where I want to close also. I'm looking forward to your feedback to see what we can do better. That was the first webinar, as we said, what we can do better, what we can improve in the next webinar to make really this experience fruitful for all the Canadian stakeholders, but also the Europeans who want to engage with the Canadian stakeholders. This is a huge opportunity. Canada's association to Horizon Europe, we should not miss it. So please come up with your ideas, and if I may suggest, also for questions that have not been answered, please come back to us in writing, and we will be happy to accommodate as much as possible. So without any further delay, to wrap up, I am looking forward to seeing you all, and even more numbers that we had today, to the second webinar on the 20th of February, which is dedicated, as we said, on another important cluster of Pillar 2, Cluster 6, devoted to food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. Many, many thanks again from all of us here.